Hello Year 3, Mrs Thomas here, and I'm going to be reading part 2 of chapter 25, The Great Glass Lift. Grandpa Joe shouted, "Yippee! Here we go!" And Mrs TV cried out, "The rope has broken! We're going to crash!" And Mr Wonka said, "Calm yourself down, my dear lady." He patted her comfortably on her arm. And then Grandpa Joe looked down at Charlie, who was clinging to his legs, and he said, "Are you all right, Charlie?" Charlie shouted, "I love it! It's like being on a roller coaster." And through the glass walls of the lift, as it rushed along, they caught sudden glimpses of strange and wonderful things going on in some of the other rooms. An enormous spout with brown sticky stuff oozing out of it on the floor, a great craggy mountain made entirely of fudge, with Oompa Loompas all roped together for safety, hacking huge hunks of fudge out of its sides, a machine with white powder spraying out of it like a snowstorm, a lake of hot caramel with steam coming off of it, a village of Oompa Loompas with tiny houses and streets, and hundreds of Oompa Loompa children no more than 4 inches high playing in the streets. And now the lift began flattening out again, and it seemed to be going faster than ever, and Charlie could hear the scream of the wind outside as it hurtled forwards, and it twisted and turned, and it went up and it went down, and "I'm going to be sick," yelled Mrs TV, turning green in the face. "Please don't be sick," said Mr Wonka. "Try and stop me," said Mrs TV. "Then you'd better take this," said Mr Wonka, and he swept his magnificent black top hat off his head and held it upside down in front of Mrs TV's mouth. "Make this awful thing stop," ordered Mr TV. "Can't do that," said Mr Wonka. "It won't stop till we get there. I only hope no one's using the other lift at the moment." "What's the other lift?" screamed Mrs TV. "The one that goes the opposite way on the same track as this one," cried Mr Wonka. "Holy mackerel," cried Mr TV. "You mean we might have a collision?" "I've always been lucky so far," said Mr Wonka. Now I'm going to be sick," yelled Mrs TV. No, said Mr Wonka. "Not now. We're nearly there. Don't spoil my hat." The next moment there was a screaming of brakes, and the lift began to slow down. Then it stopped altogether. "Some ride," said Mr TV, wiping his great sweaty face with a handkerchief. "Never again," gasped Mrs TV. And then the doors of the lift slid open, and Mr Wonka said, "Just a minute now. Listen to me. I want everybody to be very careful in this room. There is dangerous stuff around in here, and you must not tamper with it."